Hey guys, the Chrono Odyssey 17-minute gameplay walkthrough dropped yesterday, so I'm going to go over everything the trailer showed and basically scrutinize the gameplay, UI, and smaller elements that people may have missed. I'm aware that content creators have released reviews on a previous version that they played on shortly after the trailer came out, but a lot of them seem to talk about the game on a higher level and not really going into specific details of the game. I'm also aware that there's a lot of criticism on the polish and performance of the beta, so I'm not going to comment on that too much in the video. I myself haven't played any version of the game, and anything I say in this video is just speculation and guesses, so take them with a grain of salt. Also, I'm recording this when there's construction happening next door, so I'll try my best to cut them out, but I can't really help it. Without further ado, let's start. The first part of the trailer shows us a map with a place called First Breath Hill. If we're going to take this name literally, it might be where we start off with, and if it is, we can already take a look at the surrounding map. At this point, we don't really know exactly what each icon means, but over the course of the video, they will reveal them. The first transition from the map to a dungeon suggests that these circus looking icons are dungeons. Let's take a look at the UI. This is the UI for mouse and keyboard, and the first thing to note is that it looks quite minimalistic. There's not much going on, which is a good thing. You have all your standard information, party list, chat, skills, and more. Let's go through them all one by one. The first thing is the PvE note on the very top left. This suggests that there's going to be open PvP zones. Below that, we have the party list, levels, classes, timers on buffs and debuffs, some kind of colored symbol, which to my current understanding are simply colors to recognize your teammates easier. On the bottom left, we have a standard chat. The top middle is a compass, which I'm going to assume will show waymarks placed on the map later, in the overworld maybe. When hovering over an enemy, we can see its health as the red bar and something else for the orange bar. The bar decreases every time it gets hit, so this leads me to believe that it's a stagger meter similar to Souls games, but just visible. You can also see what buffs and debuffs are on the enemy. Near the bottom middle, you have your skills and your consumables. We can see 4 available consumables on the F buttons. There's also a blue potion, which is usually for mana, but the character in play is a ranged bow and crossbow user, which leads me to think that perhaps skills have a mana cost in this game, but we'll have to see more. Next are the 8 skills to the right. From the developer interview, we know that this game's combat revolves around a weapon swapping system. So these 4 unhighlighted skills are going to be only available when you use your left weapon, in this case the crossbow, and the same for the right. There seems to be some kind of resource gauge, maybe specifically for the bow and arrow, since as we see very shortly, there's no resource for berserkers. We have our standard HP, some other kind of meter that we will see change color depending on the classes, and our stamina bar below that. The colored meter is interesting because from the rest of the video, it appears that there are several conditions which raise the bar. For example, one of them is actually getting hit by damage. The circle C-bind is the chrono mechanic which acts like an ultimate. To the right a bit more, we see 4 more slots, which I assume are also going to be skills. Finally, your XP bar at the bottom, and the objective at the top right. In terms of UI in an MMO, this is quite clean, especially when you look at other KMMOs which usually have a bunch of clutter on the screen. The damage numbers also are different colors. It either looks like this is either going to be a damage type based system, so like piercing, slashing, blunt stuff like that, or I'm just overthinking and it's just different party members having different colored damage. We can see here that sometimes when your party members get hit, there's a prompt that presumably helps them in some way, but I'm not too clear on that yet. We can also see that it's clear when you're in combat as this sword icon will appear next to your HP bar. The next transition from map to world quest suggests that these banner looking icons are ongoing world quests. Something to note here is that their secondary bar is 0 when riding the horse. This probably means that it's a resource bar that is gained in combat somehow, and the conditions for building it differs from class to class. For example, if we rewind to the shielding class, we can see it actually seems to build meter when you successfully shield something, which is interesting. I would think it costs meter to block, but I could be wrong anyway. When your party members aren't on your screen, you can clearly see where they are and the distance they are from you by these icons on the sides of your screen. One of the ranger's skills is a stance skill where they turn into a rapid fire stance. The time remaining can clearly be seen by a bar shown, but what's interesting is that the skills themselves disappear from the skill hotbar. It looks like a design choice since the skills come back once the bar finishes, but it's something minor to note. Each enemy here also has a red circle surrounding it. At first I thought this would be the range for some of the boss's skills or an AoE, or maybe you just need to be inside of it to count towards the quest completion, but it doesn't look like any of these are the case. I'm a bit stumped on this one, to be honest. These stone gateway looking icons are time portals. We are now shown the controller UI, which I'd argue is actually even cleaner than the mouse and keyboard. It's the same information, but the skills are split up between the left and right bumpers. It looks like there might only be 2 consumable slots though. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't just use a full D-pad for 4 consumables. And here it looks like when you weapon swap, you lose a considerable chunk of stamina. So I guess this is how they make you limit weapon swapping. Next up are field bosses, which are denoted by these goat monster icons. There's not much to say here, I didn't really spot anything new to talk about. Next are void nexuses, shown by whatever this symbol is. In this clip, we can see that the character is actually in a party of 6. In the developer interview, they said even in late game content, the game is designed in a way that encourages people to party up in groups of 5. However, having 6 here probably means that you can have a larger group if you wanted to, but we've yet to see how this affects loot or XP. Something to notice is that when the character uses this skill which stabs an enemy then swings them back into the pack, the enemy can actually be visually seen to be stuck on the sword as it's swinging. Very nice attention to detail. The same icon is used for region bosses, except the icon is red. Another cool thing to note here is that the boss uses the environment to change up its attack patterns. For example here, the boss latches onto the house and leaps forward. I've always found environmental interactions in boss fights so great because they add a layer of depth, uniqueness, and immersion to the fight. When the environment is tailored towards the boss, it really feels like everything is against you, not just the boss. This, however, is also where we start to see some choppy frames in the boss movement. It's very odd since the characters are moving fine, which leads me to believe that maybe the bosses are animated on 2s. I'm not exactly sure how that would work in a game, but it definitely looks like the bosses are moving at a slower frame rate than the players. To talk about open world, which they use a paper and quill icon for. Presumably these just mean quests found in the open world though. Next up are labyrinths, which are shown by a large stone structure. Something I noticed here was that parts of the screen near the UI have some sort of warped effect to them. It doesn't appear in other clips, so I'm assuming this is only for labyrinths, and it doesn't really matter in terms of gameplay, but it does add a subtle touch. And now we see the double jump. I know this is beta footage and the game is not complete, but still. This double jump looks absolutely atrocious. I really hope they fix this before the game goes live. The skull icons represent outlaws on bounty hunting, nothing else much to say here. The sword icons, which were all over the map at the start, represent open PvP zones. Previously I said there seemed to be a prompt which allows you to help your teammates in some way, but this also appears in PvP zones when you're fighting against people, so I don't really know what this indicates anymore. We can see that when your stamina runs out, you may be forced to remain inactive whilst your stamina recharges. In the ranger's POV, she reaches 0 stamina and then her character freezes for a second whilst the text recovering stamina appears. I hope this isn't the case because I don't think something like that fits into an open world PvP game, but we'll see. It also appears that some buffs or debuffs appear on top of characters' heads here. Dynamic events are represented by question mark icons, which they say are quests that appear as a result of a living world. I think if they do this right, it will become a big driving point for the game. Quests that generate upon changing world dynamics aren't very common, but they provide deeper immersion and makes the game feel fresh since not everything is scripted. Next up are trials, shown by these cliff icons. Here we are shown a vendor menu. At the top, there are 3 tabs. The first is all, we can assume that the second are potions, but the third is a bit more ambiguous. Looking at the items in the all tab, perhaps it's upgrade materials or recipes. It seems some items are only allowed a one-time purchase per character and is bound upon buying. At the bottom right here, we can also see a wait icon, which makes me wonder if there's an encumber mechanic in this game. Even further down, there's a refresh button, which brings up the idea of rotating shops. And finally, there's actually 2 different types of currency shown here. One is the traditional in-game currency, which I'm just going to call gold, and the other is some other type. Since this is shown in the trial parts of the walkthrough, this is probably currency that you earn in the trial, which also disappears upon exiting. I can't see how much of this currency we currently have though. The next are life skills, which are shown by some icons, but I doubt they're actually going to be on the map. This part of the walkthrough shows a lot of menus, which is usually the part where typical KMMO percentage chances appear. From an interview by Chrono with the developers, they stated that they are absolutely against pay-to-win nature and will only monetize the game through cosmetics, but in another interview they also said that they may charge players for quality of life conveniences so I'm not too sure how I feel about that. In the menus, there are tabs for different types of equipment, but the thing we're all interested in are the RNG components. The only thing I see here that might matter in terms of gear progression are the prefixes and special attributes on items as shown here. These seem to be random stat bonuses that an item may or may not get upon acquiring, in which case you can imagine how RNG dependent it could possibly get at endgame when there's 5 attributes, each of which has a low chance of acquiring. Looking at the gear enhancement screen, there's no immediate pop-outs that scream percentage-based enhancements, or god forbid reverse progression, so that looks good. Transferring item skills to another item also looks fine, although there is a warning that says sometimes one general attribute will be removed. If this is random, then again, that's another RNG element to it. Now, as an end to this specific part, I'm not completely against RNG elements in progression, but when it acts as a time gate or if overly done, then that's when my concerns start rising. Next up is the Chronotector, which acts like some sort of ultimate. From what I've heard from the reviews and the stuff shown here, it looks like there's a selection of abilities you can choose from to equip, and through some sort of progression you can upgrade these abilities. There's your time stop, time reversal, minion summoning, movement enhancement, which leaves one last ability in the dark. Skipping Chrono Gates because they don't have anything new to talk about, we arrive at Eden, the last bit of the walkthrough. From what it sounds like and from what people are discussing, it seems to be an extraction mode similar to Tarkov, where you enter an area for loot and have to escape against a timer, otherwise you lose everything. This is also where we see some PvPvE happen, as some players are fighting against each other whilst also fighting against the boss. At the end here, we also see someone get ganked when they're about to escape, which begs the question if people are just going to camp portals, which I guess are just the side effect of this type of content. The player who wins the fight also loots the other player's body here and picks up a legendary piece of gear. I really hope this isn't gear that they're wearing, but rather it was in their inventory, because that would make for a miserable experience otherwise. And that was the end of the trailer. If I've said anything that's already been confirmed or clarified by other sources, then feel free to let me know. Aside from the performance and polish, which has already been criticized by a lot of content creators, the game looks good. I hope this video brought up some things that you perhaps may not have noticed beforehand, and thanks for watching.